Now, the logistics sector has been identified as one of the industries in the South African labour landscape that continues to show resilience amid the current challenging economic environment. That as it remains one of the 11 sectors that still managed to stay on course, according to the second quarter labour force survey. Brima Logistics Chair Matsietsi Mekoa joins us now in studio to discuss these developments further. Thank you so much for your time. It's an interesting conversation to be having about logistics and the current nature of this industry in South Africa, given the unemployment figures that we saw. How is Brima navigating this particular environment?
Thank you very much. Look, we looked at the numbers first and foremost. It's interesting that you start by talking about the gains, but we looked at the sector overall is shredding jobs. So at Brima, we are very fortunate that we have seen an increase in our numbers as far as employment is concerned. So we can say that the sector, as much as the sector generally is having challenges, logistics is gaining momentum. And this really is as a result of the stats are indicating that post-COVID, the rail sector has not been able to pick up. But what is interesting is that the road freight is picking up steadily. So that's why you can see those gains into the logistics. So we're flowing into that space, but also looking at what are the impacts of technology into the sector as a whole. We are not sure whether these numbers that we have seen in the sector, that the jobs that have been shredded, what are the drivers behind it? Could technology be one of them? But we are at Brima looking at how do we balance the technology advancement while at the same time we want to be growing job numbers.
Now, Brima is competing with giants who have been in the industry for much longer than you have. Talk to us about the industry receiving you, but also in a framework of creating even more jobs deliberately so for a market that essentially has been run by our white counterparts, and you coming in as a black industry leader and making strides.
Well, what stands in our favor is that we are a 20-year-old company, and our service offering is blended. So we do your clearing and warehousing, forwarding, and then we do warehousing, we do courier, and then we do reverse logistics. So when you look at it, we provide an integrated package of services, and that has worked for us because we are able then to service. Sometimes we have a client that we give a package of all 4. Sometimes we give the client a package of 2. So there's always something that we can be able to offer the client. But it is true that the sector is very difficult to navigate. And one of the things that we've been able to do very well is to grow our national footprint. We have 151 staff members. We operate and service all the provinces in the country. And we are now even looking at how do we then grow using our value chain, but most importantly as well, looking at taking advantage of the government announcing the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. There are opportunities there, and how do we then start moving within that space to make sure that our offerings can be taken into account when other industry players are packaging their services.
I'm glad you mentioned the latter because there is space for growth on the African continent. Plans in that regard?
Yes, look, with over 1 billion inhabitants, Africa creates opportunities. The stats are showing now that SADC is expected to grow at 2.3%, Sub-Saharan Africa at 4.3%. So if you take those 2 regions only, you can see gains there. Now, in terms of our vision board, we've looked at we can provide all services. But it is going to be important that for the African continental framework to work, that there is investment in Africa by the leaders and the decision makers to make sure that the infrastructure can sustain the tonnage that are expected. I mean, we were looking at the reports that indicate that in terms of fleet, the Continental Free Trade Agreement is expected that there will be about 1.8 million trucks that will be needed for your bulk cargo, and about 284,000 for your containers. Space there because we are already playing in that environment. So definitely we are looking to grow into the African market. And we do have vision even to go into air, because we are already, as I said, servicing that, but we want to go directly now. The advantage of looking at air, to me, saying, is that most of the commercial airlines, when you look at it, the type of aircraft that they have chosen does not have belly. So you cannot put the tonnages, the volumes that needs to go on air. So you need somebody that can come and close that gap. And we wanted to close that gap through Brima Air Cargo.
As we mark Women's Month, how friendly is the logistics industry where female representation is concerned? I mean, you just recently were the DDG in the presidency's office. That agenda must be put forward in this country.
Definitely. I mean, when we look in South Africa, again, stats are saying 21.9% of the businesses in South Africa are owned by women. The global average is 22.9. But when you segment it further, women are still finding it very hard to get into these male-dominated spaces. We looked again at the chartered logistics, the sector where they're giving stats of what is happening. They're indicating that 7 out of 10 jobs are still occupied by men. And we looked as well at what does that mean. 28.3% of workforce are just reserved for women. And women are also indicating that the salary disparities in the sector are also a challenge. So when you look at it, the basket of issues that affect women, but at Brima Logistics, we've been very fortunate because our own mantra has always been develop women. In our executive, we've got 2 women. That started with Brima when we opened the first door. They've been with us, and we encourage them because we've seen passion. We've encouraged them to study, advance themselves, to the extent that they even went and got the MBA. Now we have them as in the executive. But what we wanted to do to say, we know how hard it is. There could be more other Brimas out there. The space is big enough. We need to open it. But it is still very difficult for women to navigate the space in logistics.
We'll leave it on that positive note, and thank you so much for your time. Matsietsi Mekoa is the chair at Brima Logistics, having a conversation with us about that particular industry, as well as female representation as we continue to mark Women's Month.